Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is episode 38 of High Street Sports. My name is Chris. This is Vince. This is the Buckeye Show. A few things to talk about here before we dive into the last week's worth of Ohio State football activity. Our last episode was the first in this show's short history to get over 1,000 views. So round of applause to everybody who tuned in for that. Really turned that one up and showed out and, really came through with that one with the views and the engagement and stuff like that. So that was awesome. Good to see out of that. The only thing that I will say is that 95% of you that watched that episode are not subscribed. So if you stopped in, liked what you saw, or didn't, or whatever, just hit that sub button. Pretty easy thing. It would help us out a lot. But thank you guys again for getting that episode over 1,000 views. That was awesome to see. And really, really cool to kind of take all that in once we put that one out. So thank you guys again. We are inching closer to our 100 sub goal, so we are almost there, about 15 or so away from reaching that 100 sub goal. That would be awesome before we could get there before the end of the NFL season or what have you. But thank you guys for coming out in our first season and interacting with us and listening to us, and really means a lot. And we've enjoyed being here, and we will continue to enjoy being here. So thank you guys so much. We wouldn't have any reason to do this without you guys. So any opening ideas, Vince, before we get going on this new week of Buckeye football happenings?
Yeah, my lock of the week is hit that subscribe button. It's the free way to tell us you love what we're doing. But in all seriousness, as we get to it in this show, Ohio State had a big week, 2 big transfers. Center Seth McLaughlin from Alabama didn't do real well against Michigan, but has had a decent career throughout his time at Alabama. And the big one, quarterback Will Howard from Kansas State, who's a dual threat guy. And I think he's going to bring some depth to this room. We'll see where the coaching shakeups kind of pan out. And then I think this could be, there's hope on the horizon for this 11-2 Ohio State Buckeye team.
Yeah, so that brings up a good point. About Will Howard and the addition. Kansas State quarterback, 4-year guy from Kansas State, won a Big 12 championship last year. Is a pretty proven leader, which is something that Ohio State desperately needed. Didn't really see a lot of that at the quarterback position last year. We've kind of talked throughout the season about our opinion of the leadership out of that quarterback position or lack thereof. So, Will Howard's a guy that kind of brings what Ohio State was missing in a lot of ways at that position since CJ Stroud, a guy with edge, a guy with some attitude, a guy with some fire. So, it'll be interesting to see how that, I guess he's not technically been guaranteed the starting job or whatever, but as people have talked about, it would have been hard to bring him in without some guarantee on some level that he would take at least the number 1 reps in the spring and fall. So, it says a lot about Devin Brown and Lincoln Kienholz for sticking around at least through this first transfer portal window. So, we'll kind of see what happens there and how that shakes out throughout the spring and what happens and what the room looks like going into the summer. Not a lot of people, I don't think I've heard anybody say that they anticipate Devin Brown departing from Ohio State. Will Howard is a 1-year rental, so to speak, for the Buckeyes. But a lot of good things, he said in his availability and what's been gotten out there to the media. He's already referred to the team up north as the team up north and says that, pointed that out as one of the goals and the biggest goal. So already a step in the right direction and a good thing to hear for Buckeye fans. But, what are your initial thoughts on what Will Howard brings to this team, how it will change the dynamic of this team and what it means for the Buckeyes overall?
Yeah, I gotta bring up one point you mentioned there first. I don't know that CJ Stroud brought a lot of fire here at Ohio State. He certainly brought a lot of fire.
More than Kyle McCord.
He certainly brings a lot of fire to that Texans team. I would say that we haven't seen fire like this at Ohio State since Justin Fields, but minor correction there.
Oh, well, anything is a step up from Kyle McCord. So
Absolutely. Yes. We're getting a leader. And I think you got two vocal guys that want to lead in that room now, which we've seen in the past is really good. I think that the biggest thing that this transfer for Will Howard does for Ohio State is it adds some more competition. And it's a guy who knows that this is his last year. He wants that further development so that he can take the next step and maybe play on Sundays. So there's a lot for him to come in and compete for here. He's had to compete most of his career at Kansas State. He's been benched, I think, each of the 4 years that he's played. So, he's no stranger to walking in the room and competing. And I think that is probably the biggest intangible that he's going to bring to this dynamic. He's not the best passer in the world. I think he's got some development opportunity there. And why not come see what Ryan Day can do for you? And Corey Dennis, if he's still around, or the next quarterback coach, if they do move on from Corey Dennis. So I think that, this is a really good situation for a guy that, it could be a very similar situation to what Mississippi State had last year. They brought in a transfer quarterback to push Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart ultimately won the job and played really well for Mississippi State. So who's to say that can't work at Ohio State?
Yeah, and I think, overall, obviously, if you were one of the 1,000+ people that watched the last episode here, you saw what, kind of our opinions were about the way that game went, especially for the quarterback position, but as the offense as a whole. Obviously, you lose Devin Brown, and Lincoln Kienholz kind of gets thrown to the wolves and behind an offensive line that really couldn't block anything. So, there's really not much that you could read out of that room other than you probably needed some more depth. And Will Howard's a guy who, like you said, has been battle tested, won a Big 12 championship. So, he knows what it takes to win. And, it appears from everything that he's put out into the internet that, he is coming here to compete. He's coming here to win. And I think, having the weapons that Ohio State does on offense, if you get a commitment from Emeka Egbuka to come back next year, but even the young guys, Jeremiah Smith had a really good All-American Bowl on Saturday. So, you got some weapons coming in, which is better than what he had at Kansas State. So you would have to think that he'd be in a better position there. Obviously, you mentioned that he's got room to grow as a passer, but, he's got a long way to go before August, whatever it is, or September, whatever it is, for the opening day in the fall. So, big addition for the Buckeyes as far as leadership goes, big addition for the Buckeyes in the quarterback room for the competition. And Lincoln Kienholz will be better for it. Aaron Nolan will be better for it. And Devin Brown will be better for it, likely on the other side of this. So, nothing but good coming out of that decision for the Buckeyes. And then, as you mentioned earlier, Mr. McLaughlin coming from Alabama. You mentioned also a rough game against Michigan, but he was a 2-year starter at Alabama. So, there's something to be said if you're a 2-year starter.
And a 4-year program guy too, right?
Yeah, I think so, but I'm not sure.
Because this is his last year. He was a graduate last year. So I would assume that he would have graduated in 3 and then is now doing his master's in 2. So, but keep going there on Mr.
No,
McLaughlin.
I mean, anytime you can add, a starter at a school like Alabama, you don't just get to be a starter there for no reason. So, struggles aside, that is going to be a big pickup for the Buckeyes offensive line, who seemingly has lost all faith in Carson Hinsman. That also, speaks that Josh Padilla is not ready to go either. So, it's a move that the Buckeyes desperately needed to make, and they did. So, that adds depth, that adds experience to that offensive line that needs it. So, 2 pretty big pickups for the Buckeyes in the transfer portal this past week, after seeing not much of anything before then. So, good news there. On the other side of that, there were some pretty large announcements that came this past week as well for the Buckeyes about guys that are returning. Defensive end Jack Sawyer is returning, along with safety Lathan Ransom. So those are two huge pickups for the Buckeyes as far as, you know, safety depth goes, and you know, keeping that defensive line room intact as well. So, you know, two pretty big pickups there. You know, that move to get Lathan Ransom back kind of frees up the defense and Jim Knowles, should they want to move Sonny Styles to a linebacker position, which a lot of people have said would be more beneficial for Sonny. That moves, you know, that frees up that move. But, you know, the Buckeyes probably excuse me, are going to need to add another safety in the portal. So that is something to look out for. You do have Jihad Carter coming back, a guy that dealt with some injury and that looks to improve on what he was able to do last year when he was on the field. So you do have Jihad Carter back there, and you've got some young guys. But with the departure of Kai Stokes, you know, you'll probably still need another one back there. So, you know, what are you thinking about what Lathan and Jack add to this defense? You know, I think, you know, they're obviously still waiting on some announcements from Jordan Hancock and Denzel Burke. But as it stands right now, what do you think about those additions back for Ohio State?
Well, I want to step back real quick and unpack a few things. Seth McLaughlin, I'm really excited to see what he can do and how he can improve this line. I know that he had a tough time snapping the ball, especially in that Rose Bowl game against Michigan. So you really hope that he can fix that. And if he can't fix that, can he move inside to guard? And then on the defensive side, you brought up a guy, Jihad Carter, who transferred from Syracuse. And I believe that now that was actually a trade for future considerations, and the future considerations were Kyle McCord. Not sure who won that trade yet, but I think that we're going to find out this season. Jihad Carter has not looked great. He got hurt a little bit this season. But when he did play was not so much. There was also the freshman there. I can't think of his name right now. Malik something.
Hartford.
Yes, Malik Hartford. I think that he's probably next in line to play one of those safety spots if Sonny moves down to linebacker. And I think that it's probably a good shot that Sonny moves down to linebacker, because he was really good in the run game when he was playing safety for our guy. I'm sorry. I know. Safety for our guy, Lathan Ransom.
Yeah.
And just, you know, it's one of those things. I think he looks more natural there. We saw how CJ Hicks looked in the Cotton Bowl. I don't think he looked like a fish out of water, to be completely honest. And you feel for the kid, because he was a five-star all everything guy. Hasn't played just really very much his first 2 years at Ohio State. And you wonder what's next for him if he's going to make it here at Ohio State. I would love to see him make it. He's a physical freak. They just need to figure out a position for him, stick him there, and you know, use him wisely. And I think that that's one of the things that I really want to see in this defense for next year is, what are you going to do with these physical freaks that you have? You've got Sonny Styles, you've got CJ Hicks, you've got those guys that fit an archetype of Isaiah Simmons almost. You know, you get that comparison. So what are you going to do with these guys, and how are you going to showcase their talent? Because I don't think that right now their lack of production or lack of flashes is due to talent. I think it is the scheme right now is too conservative to let some athletes just go run free.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point there, and I think that's kind of Jim Knowles being caught in between being overly aggressive in his first year at Ohio State, and then, you know, making the adjustments that he made last year to put Ohio State's defense in a position that it was, which was one of the best, if not the best defenses in the country, throughout last season. So yeah, you got to find a way to get those guys on the field, to your point, in a beneficial way for them and for the defense. And I think for both of those guys that we've mentioned, being Sonny Styles and CJ Hicks, Sonny's right place on the defense is probably a linebacker, and CJ's right place on the defense is probably on the defensive line. So, you got to kind of figure out what you're going to do there. But yeah, I totally agree with that. You got to put the guys in a position to succeed. And I think with the, addition of Lathan, that will help in the way of Sonny Styles. You got to figure out what you want to do and how Larry Johnson and Jim Knowles want to run this defense, because, you've seen in the first 2 years some disagreement there, whether it shows on camera or to the public or not. But there's definitely a difference in opinion based on playing time and the way that the defensive line is put out and the rotation and stuff like that. So yeah, there are some question marks there that they need to fill to put Ohio State's defense and to continue to put Ohio State's defense in the position that it was this year, which is back to being the Silver Bullets and back to being one of the best defenses in the country.
Yeah, I really want to see the defense, I think, really sustain what happened last year or what happened this season and really grow to be more dominant. Not to say they weren't dominant this year. I think they were what Oklahoma called in, what was that, 2016, a basic defense. I think that they were very basic. I think they can build on a lot of the things that they did. And I think Jim Knowles realized, hey, I can't come in here day one and just go. I have to actually, get the guys in place and teach the fundamentals first, even though these are probably some of the highest level athletes that he's ever worked with.
Oh, 100%.
So, it's one of those things where I think that we haven't seen or scratched the surface yet. And I think that, I'm excited for the future of that side of the ball. We'll see how things play out as far as offseason moves, if there are any. I don't foresee any offseason moves on the defensive staff unless Larry finally hangs him up. But I don't think he's going to. But who knows? I mean, there was rumblings out of a recruit or a transfer a couple of weeks ago saying that, the whole reason they were hesitant or didn't want to come to Ohio State was Larry Johnson retiring. So who knows?
Yeah, those rumors have been going on for some years. I don't foresee that happening. I think that probably would have played a part in the recruitment of Edric Houston as well, if that were the case. And I don't really foresee Edric choosing to, stick with his commitment to Ohio State, should he have known, and I'm sure he would have, if Larry was, if Larry's time was coming to an end at Ohio State. So I wouldn't be on the lookout for that this year. That might be a move next year or potentially, 2 years from now or whatever the case is. But as long as the defense has this kind of success that they've had, this year, then I wouldn't imagine Larry stepping away, within the next year or two.
Yeah. But one guy I'm hoping is moved on with is Parker Fleming. I think that his time here at Ohio State has brought a lot of good learning to him and to the university, and I think to Ryan Day. And I think that there's kind of a sentiment around the program right now that maybe Ohio State's not the best place for a coach to be a first-time position coach or coordinator, whatever the case may be. And I think that Ryan Day learned the hard way here with a couple of guys, and I think one is Parker Fleming. He did a great job as a grad assistant and then a quality control guy, ultimately got himself hired to the big leagues here with Ohio State and is likely going to be shown the door after this season. We've seen it over the last few years. There's been some big special teams blunders. The fake punt that was not a fake punt. Actually, I think that's happened a couple of times. Too many delay games on punts, not knowing who's going out and doing what, not being as decisive. And then just straight up, you can't return kicks. You can't return punts. If you can't do those two things, what are you bringing if your punter is, hitting 40-yard punts average?
Transferring to Vanderbilt.
Right. So, yeah, I think that, we've learned a lot of lessons, and I think we need to get back to the days of Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer special teams and really transform that third unit.
Yeah, I mean, how many, again, like we talk about it and people have talked about it. Ohio State hasn't returned a punt for a touchdown since 2014.
Punt was 2015, and that was Jalen Marshall against Indiana.
Yep. So that's just far
was
too long.
2010.
Yeah. So I mean, that's crazy. Not to say that special teams comes down to those things, but good Lord, when you haven't had either of those things happen in that long and can't cover, can't do much of anything good on special teams, what value do you really bring to a program as the full-time special teams coordinator when that can go to somebody else who can, there's just no need to have special teams coordinators out recruiting long snappers when we need to be recruiting other people. But that's a story for a different day. But yes, that is absolutely a move that everybody anticipates to be made in the coming days. Should have happened by now, but again, different story for a different day. But yes, there are some impending not head coaching, but coaching staff changes, that are going to be important for Ohio State going forward. And that, should be important for Ohio State going forward, and decisions that Ryan Day really needs to make. And they're going to be hard decisions to make. Nobody likes firing anybody, but when it's, for the betterment of the team, then it's a necessity, and Ryan Day needs to do what's right for the Buckeyes. And then a lot of people, are wondering what's going to happen with Hartline. There's been some speculation that Ohio State is willing and will look to see what kind of names are out there to bring in for a offensive play caller, offensive coordinator. But Brian Hartline's job seems to be intact with Ohio State no matter what. Will be interesting to see if that happens, what exactly his role turns into. Will he go back to being just a wide receivers coach, or what exactly, are they going to try the co-offensive coordinator thing again, or what that would look like? I can't really see, a demotion from offensive coordinator back down to wide receivers coach with that kind of money being intact. So you would have to assume that it would be co-offensive coordinator, which would be beneficial to both Brian Hartline and Ohio State as a whole. It would give, it would afford Ryan Day to finally give up play calling, which is something that has been talked about for the last 2 years. So it would afford him the opportunity to kind of take that quote unquote CEO role, as opposed to having to worry about calling the offense and, doing all the things that an offensive coordinator does, plus his responsibility as a head coach. So be interesting to see what kind of names are thrown out there, or who would be the one to get hired for that job. Kind of sucks that Kenny Guyton got hired by Luke Fickell at Wisconsin. Would have loved to see him on the staff in some kind of capacity, whether that be quarterbacks coach or what have you. But good luck to Kenny Guyton up there with Coach Fick at Wisconsin. But it would be interesting to see what kind of names would be out there. Hell, call JT Barrett, get somebody like that to come coach the quarterbacks, or somebody, So it'll be interesting to see where they go in that route.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a seasoned coach come in and be your quarterback / co-OC, or however they want to call it.
Yeah.
Because, I think that, it'll probably be Brian Hartline.
This guy.
Sorry, I cannot. I'm
guy.
not feeling well today. But
it is almost 6:30 on a Sunday night, so we'll give that to you.
yeah, old man status over here.
Almost bedtime.
No, I think that you're going to see somebody come in that's established, who's called plays before. I would be surprised if it was this guy, but maybe somebody like Cliff Kingsbury, someone like that, who can come in and you can trust him to call the plays and run the offense and teach a quarterback how to play quarterback. And then give Brian Hartline really that trading.
Lord have mercy.
Mentor short. My goodness, I cannot help myself. I'm sorry, guys. And it's not that I don't want to be here. I am not feeling well and quite tired, obviously.
It's a flu game.
Yeah, exactly. It's my MJ flu game.
We power through. Well, that might have been a hangover game, but we'll slide past that. But we power through.
This is certainly not a hangover. But I really think that you're going to see someone like that come in, and any position coach that does come in is probably going to be that type of coach, established, ready to go.
And that's what Ohio State needs. And to your earlier point of this is not really the place nor the time in Ohio State's program, history or whatever. Like this is a pretty important time in Ohio State football, and this is a very important year for Ryan Day. I think the writing is on the tea leaves. If it does not work out for Ryan the way that a new Lord have mercy, a new athletic director.
Yep, Jesus. There you
go. You got new people coming in and new eyes and a whole new way of thinking and way of doing things. And I think it's pretty clear that Ryan Day cannot afford to lose a 4th straight game to Michigan. I think everybody knows that. I think he knows that, and he cannot afford to not win the Big Ten again. And I know the dynamic is changing, and there's a 12-team playoff on the horizon, and so a lot of things are going to change, but there's a lot of really good teams that are coming into the Big Ten next year. And Ohio State, as we mentioned on the last show, Ohio State has to travel to Oregon next year. And so, a lot of things are going to change, and you could get away with, some things in the past that you're not going to be able to get away with this next year and beyond. So the need for experienced offensive play calling is a strong need for the Buckeyes. The need for a strong offensive voice is there for the Buckeyes. And not to say that Ryan Day has lost his play calling mojo or anything like that. And, we have seen a big difference in that in the last, 2 to 3 years. But, it's hard for a head coach to have to worry about calling the plays on offense and doing the rest of the head coaching responsibilities. So it's at this point, it's a necessary evil that whether or not Ryan wants to give up the play calling duties, he's going to have to. And, as we've talked about, as other people have talked about, head coaches that call plays do not win national championships. And that just is what it is. So, it's that's a trend that's not looking like it's going to change. And so, it's unfortunately time to go ahead and, make that decision to move on from that, bring in an experienced play caller, somebody that can add a new set of eyes to the offense. And depending on TreVeyon Henderson's decision, depending on Emeka Egbuka's decision, that could be a massive, massive turning point for this offense if they are able to get a good play caller in with the offense that the Buckeyes could potentially have next year. So, big decisions coming for Ryan Day.
Yeah, I think you're going to have some really nice wide receivers next year. Regardless of Emeka coming back, you've got Arnell Tate, Brandon Inniss, both flashed this season. And then you also have Jeremiah Smith coming in.
Jaden Ballard, once again, will be there for the Buckeyes.
I don't think he's going to play much. To be honest,
he's experienced.
Yeah, fair catching at the 5-yard line when he should be letting that go, Holmes.
Yeah. Well,
He's also, I mean, there's also some good things there. You've got Kojo Antwi as well, young guy, but outside of that, with the transfers out of Bryson Rogers, Noah Rogers, and I feel like there's been one more, and then the 21 class, 21 class, they also transferred out two or three guys as well. So that room's kind of looking depleted, but I think that you're gonna see the best three guys play, and I think that that's why it's kind of depleted. Very unfortunate, at least. At least in my thought, or in my opinion, that we're letting talent go elsewhere, and not adequately trying to get them time on the field. But it is what it is, and you can only play the best 11 at a time, and there's only so many snaps to go around. So they're getting paid millions to do it, and I am not. So I'm probably wrong here. I'm just a guy talking on the internet.
Yeah, and I think it's a situation too where, as we've talked about behind the scenes, and I don't know if we brought it to the show or not, but Ohio State in the offense is not one to put 4 or 5 wide on the field. Now, with a new offensive coordinator, play caller, whatever you want to call him, that may change, which would, I think be a welcome sight. I think it'd be nice to see 5 wide or 4 wide at some point, rather than an extra tight end or whatever the case is. But that could change. But I think it sucks when you lose guys to the transfer portal. Like it always, no matter what, it's going to sting when people make the decision to leave your program. But I think the guys that want to be here and the guys that are in that room, albeit some young guys, but you look at Jeremiah Smith and you look at the other guy's name whose name escapes me that committed with Jeremiah, not the one that flipped to Oregon, but the other one. Anywho,
I don't know. I'm not.
You look at anyways, it'll come to me. But you look at those guys and like I said, like Jeremiah Smith is a guy that I think will play day one. And how much he will play day one is remains to be seen. But he will play day one. He is, I think, exactly what people have been talking about. He is a generational type guy. Now it's just a matter of, fitting that into the offense. Who do you take off the field? How do you fit that in? And I think that's where the 4 wide and, some of that stuff would be a welcome sight, because, you have guys, and you're right, you can only play the best 11, but it's hard for me to look at that receiver room and think that, 4 of the best 11 on offense aren't in that receiver room. And I would have a very hard time thinking that 2 of the best 11 are in the tight end room. So, when you look at certain things like that, I think that's where the, new opinion, new set of eyes will, do well for the Buckeyes. And it'll be exciting to see if that change is made, and, to what capacity that change is made, what the offense looks like next year. And I don't think it'll be a dramatic change, as Luna walks in the background. I don't think it'll be a dramatic change by any means, but I think it'll be enough to, get Buckeye fans excited about what the future could be with the, weapons that Will Howard is going to have at his disposal if he is the starter going into next year. So, again, just a pivotal year, pivotal offseason.
One more I couldn't say one more weapon, but now I can. One more weapon that you may want to think about, who's in the transfer portal now. Quinshon Judkins.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on Quinshon Judkins here? I think he could be a really, really, really good 1-2 punch with Trey Henderson. Another back that transferred in and had a really good run towards the end of his career. So, do you think Quinshon Judkins could come in and kind of play that Trey Sermon role to J.K. Dobbins? And in this example, it would be to Trey Henderson.
I think I would love Quinshon Judkins to step in and come into Ohio State and, do what he did as a freshman at Ole Miss. Dude is a dynamic runner. He is,
Is it
he
old
played
or Ole?
Ole, I believe. Ole Miss Rebs down there in Mississippi. But yeah, so I think it would be, a welcome sight for the Buckeyes to have him join that running back room. However, from everything that I've seen on the internet, which don't always believe everything.
It's on the internet, so it's got to be true.
Yeah, well, some people say that, some people don't. It wasn't on Wikipedia though, so that's good. But from what I've seen, I think the Quinshon Judkins move to Ohio State would only happen if Travion were to move on to the NFL. I don't know if the possibility of him teaming up with Travion is in the cards. Now, again, that's a room that I think you need to add to. But when you have Dallin Hayden, and it's been a very strange dynamic with Dallin Hayden, because you look back at 2 years ago, and one of the big reasons that Ohio State beat Maryland at Maryland was because of Dallin Hayden and his ability to run the football. And it's interesting that we didn't really see much of Dallin Hayden at all last year. So you got to kind of wonder, with an addition of Quinshon Judkins, would that mean Dallin Hayden moves on from Ohio State? I don't know.
I don't think so. I think Dallin Hayden's probably a Master Teague type guy who, had a really good opportunity early in his career, and then injuries or guys being better than him stepped up. So you see him stick around the program, wanted to be here, wanted to get an education. I think he's going to be like that. And I'm sure he's getting a decent NIL bag too. You've got to think he's probably, making decent money, having a good college life. Maybe that's all he wants. I don't know, but he seems like that type of guy that wants to suffer in silence and really just grind his way to the top, and not really the guy that wants to speak out and really push the limit or even potentially transfer.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that too, but Dallin, I think, is a guy that pretty clearly has some talent. So it would be interesting to me, anyways, to see if Quinshon were to make the decision to come to Ohio State, if he would stick around. But I definitely think Ohio State needs to add a back there, and so obviously, I think anybody would get excited about Quinshon and what he brings to the table, and how potentially a 2-back system with Travion and Quinshon would look like. So, yeah, I mean, I think that would be great. Were some interesting things going around on Twitter when he announced that he was going to the portal. I guess a new follow of his on Instagram was Will Howard, so something to look out for. Don't really know if that means much of anything, but could.
If you had a comparable, who would you call Will Howard?
Big guy, can use his legs, can get himself in trouble with his arm. I've seen it, I've heard it. Poor man's Josh Allen. I mean, he's got the size, he's got the running ability. Obviously, you're comparing apples to oranges when you look at what Josh Allen is now. But I think if you look at what Josh Allen was at Wyoming, I think there's a pretty fair comparison there. Now, I'm not saying that, he's going to get drafted in the first round or whatever the case was with Josh Allen. But I think as far as size and, playing ability, you see what he can do with his legs. You see what, his capability is with his arm. He can make the throws. And like I said, he didn't really get a bunch of help from his receivers at Kansas State a lot of times. But, there's some room to grow with his arm. But I think he has a play style similar to that of, sort of a Wyoming version of Josh Allen.
I was thinking of a white JT Barrett.
You will not hear any JT Barrett slander out of my mouth.
That's not slander.
I know it's not
slander at all.
I know it's not, but there's a lot of people in the Buckeye fan base that
the dude
for whatever
has
reason,
the most career passing yards in Buckeye history. Like
Yeah.
what? Most career
Yeah.
touchdowns. Like he holds all of the quarterback school records. What is that? Why would that be a hater take?
No, I'm
I
not
think
saying that
that
you
he
made a
no,
hater take.
yeah, I just think that his game reminds me of JT Barrett
Yeah.
in college of,
Yeah.
he's going to run the ball and he's going to run the ball down in short yardage and goal line situations, and he can throw the ball all right, but he
Yeah.
also isn't the best quarterback all the time.
Yeah.
2014 was probably his best season.
100%.
And
If he stayed healthy, he could have won the Heisman.
yeah,
People are
100%.
saying.
And he probably should have.
Mhm.
But I think that, I think that whatever we get out of Will Howard is going to be worth it, because I think no matter what it does, it instills that competition in the quarterback room.
Mhm.
Competition in the quarterback room means competition everywhere, because everybody wants their guy. And everybody wants to fight for their guy and fight to play with their guy. So I'm hoping that we can get this offensive line fixed, and next season could very well be a really, really good season for Ohio State. The way that it is shaping up reminds me a lot of 2001 into the 2002 season, where Mike Doss said, "I'm running it back." Came back and they had a absolutely solid defense. Had Maurice Clarett, freshman phenom, coming in, Jeremiah Smith, and had a quarterback back there that could get the job done. Was a tough dude, and did whatever it took. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what the formula is, because I think that this defense coming up is going to be better than what we saw this year, especially if you get JT coming back, Denzel Burke and Jordan Hancock, which I think could. And then you've legitimately got 4 guys that can play corner all the time. But I think you see Jordan Hancock potentially move into one of those safety spots, maybe to fill in for Josh Proctor, because we've seen Hancock likes to hit in the run game. So I wouldn't be surprised there. We know he can cover. So I think, that might be a really good spot for him, one of those safety spots. And you bring in Jermaine Matthews to play that slot corner or something, or move Iggy inside. But, you get Iggy as a junior, you get Denzel as a senior if that happens, and Jermaine Matthews as a true sophomore. Sheesh.
Yeah.
That is BIA. And then if you move Sonny to linebacker, we already know Cody Simon's probably going to be starting. I don't see a world where he doesn't, although Justin Hilliard did happen, and love the guy. But came back for his 6th year thinking he was going to start, and then got Tough Borland.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
That
the
happens.
truth, right? And
happens.
so, it's something that I hope Cody Simon gets his time to shine, because he is really good. And I just don't want it to be that situation. Justin Hilliard, absolutely great human being, and really wish he would have gotten his chance as well. But
injuries with Justin Hilliard as well, man. Like he had some tough time staying healthy at Ohio State, which ultimately played a part in a lot of that too. But yeah, he did get toughed.
He did. I think that things are looking up going into spring ball. I think maybe 1 or 2 transfers here or there, and I think you're looking really good.
Yeah. I mean, and again, like it can't be understated enough. And it's like, we don't want to beat a dead horse, but it's not all doom and gloom for the Buckeyes. And it is, looking up for Ohio State. But the simple fact remains of, this is a massive offseason for Ohio State, and it was a tough December. January has started off on a better foot than December did. So there's some positive momentum coming in for the Buckeyes, although they have missed out on a couple of transfer targets that they wanted. Offensive lineman committed to Texas A&M, and I think there was a defensive end or tackle that I believe we lost out on last week. But anyways, you win some, you lose some. You're not always going to be able to get everybody that you want. So, the Buckeyes are going to continue to put themselves in a position to get better, no matter how they have to do that. They've kind of made that clear that, that is the intention is to upgrade the roster. And if there's a clear way to do that, they will do that. And, there's clear ways that they need to upgrade the coaching staff. And so we will keep an eye on that in the coming days here on High Street Sports and bring you everything that happens when it happens or shortly after it happens. So any final thoughts before we get out of here, sir?
Yeah. I'm looking forward to the next week or so when some of these coaching changes are going to be made to see kind of what the direction of the newly shaped offensive staff is going to look like. I expect most of the changes to come there. I don't know what is wrong with me. It's every time I start talking, I can sit here and not talk and I'm fine. But no, I want to see what happens with this offense. I think clearly there's some dysfunction there, and you need a guy to come in and play and call plays for Ryan Day, so that it can take some of the load off of him and he can really focus on some of the things he needs to focus on. And I think one of those can really be helping develop quarterbacks the way that he wants it. I think when we saw that with Justin Fields, we saw some pretty good development. Same with CJ Stroud as well. But I think that there was also some dysfunction there with Kyle McCord. There were some stories that came out this week as well. Kyle McCord talking about basically one of the times that Ryan Day went off on him on the sideline was when he pretty much disengaged from the school and was going to transfer at any point anyway. But that is what it is. And that's just kind of the way the cards fall sometimes. So we're going to keep looking forward to any of those changes that are going to be made here and looking up and talking about the upcoming 24 college football season when we move to a 12-team playoff.
Yes, sir. So, a lot of things are going to keep happening, not only just for the Buckeyes, but in college football. So we will have all that here for you. But obviously, keep it locked here to the Buckeye Show on High Street Sports for all things Ohio State football. We are on the road to 100 subs. So keep on subbing, share the pod, keep interacting, comments, likes, dislikes, whatever you want to do. Just, let us know what you think. And always in the comments, if you ever have a topic or something that you want to hear our dumb opinion on, just put it in the comments below. We will talk about that on the show. So go ahead and do that if there's something that you want to hear that you haven't heard on the show or a topic that you want covered that we haven't yet. But as always, guys, thank you so much for the continued support. We've really enjoyed it, and we like being here with you guys. So thank you guys for coming back. This has been episode 38 of High Street Sports for Vince. He'll go to bed and get some much-needed rest. My name is Chris. We'll see you guys next time.